I thought it might be worth just doing a quick introduction before we get started. So this is the RDA CODATA Data Systems, Tools and Services in Crisis Situations Working Group. This is probably our final session. My name is Stefanie Ketas. I'm a program manager with the Australian Research Data Commons. And I will be one of the co-chairs presenting in this session. Nana, would you like to introduce yourself as well?
Nana Bharati, and I work for Australian Research Data Commons as well. And so I work as the AI and data specialist.
And Burçak, would
Okay.
you like to just introduce yourself as well?
Yes, hello, good morning. I'm based in Ankara, Turkey, so I'm in good time morning for me. My name is Burçak. I'm a professor at Statistics Department working with disaster science nearly 27 years, nationally in Turkey and internationally. And I'm one of the co-chairs of the CODATA's IDPC International Data Policy Committee and working very happily with this working group as a co-chair with Stephanie, Nana and the others past 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Trish, do you want to just introduce yourself as well?
Hello. Yes, sure. Well, I'm here. I'm Trish Raditich. I'm based in Perth, Western Australia. I also work for the ARDC, the Australian Research Data Commons, and I am the regional community manager for RDA in the Oceania, East Asia region. And I'm here because I've got colleagues presenting, but I'm also here for your tech support and backup. So if you need anything, give me a shout. I'll definitely be here for the whole session.
Thank you. And thanks for your help, Trish. Naila and Olivier, would you like to introduce yourselves as well, or would you rather not?
Yeah, sure, no problem. So my name is Olivier Auchan. I work at CNRS in France, the largest research performing organization in France. I'm here kind of to follow up or get an update on what you're doing in your work group. I attended the World Fair CODATA Symposium at the UNESCO a couple of years ago about that tool services in crisis situations. I'm really interested in seeing how you're wrapping up your work in the work group. So I'm not directly involved in the work group, but still very interested in what you're doing.
Yeah, that sounds good. Naila, would you?
Yeah, just quickly. So I'm tab liaison, but I just want to flag up that the German funders are now very interested in data resilience, and they're starting to kind of invest in projects on this. And I'm involved in some of the writing of these proposals. So I'm highly interested in bringing your outputs in and flagging this up to people who may not know about it. So congratulations on all the work, and I'm really keen to find out more about it. Thanks.
Well, thanks very much. Hopefully we can provide something useful. Nana, would you like to go to the next slide? So I don't know about Olivier, but in case you are a new RDA member, you may know that there are 6 guiding principles at the heart of the RDA community: openness, consensus, harmonization. It's a community-driven effort. The RDA is not for profit and is technology neutral and is inclusive. If you haven't joined RDA yet, you can. Next slide, please. So for this session, just the agenda, we've just done the welcome and the introductions mostly. I'll talk a little bit about the group background. Then Burçak is going to give some updates from the UNESCO CODATA data policies in times of crisis facilitated by Open Science, or DPTC project. It's a bit of a mouthful. After that, Nana will report on the bulk of... No, please don't go forward yet. We'll report on the work that has been done over the last 1.5 years, I think, which is basically we ran a survey which slowed us down quite a bit because we had some administrative things to work through. We also, some of the group did some interviews to get a little bit more in-depth knowledge from specific participants. And also we held a session at IDW, International Data Week, in October last year. And Nana will be presenting on the results from all of those 3. Finally, I will very briefly show you what our draft recommendation looks like at the moment, and I will invite your comments and feedback, both in this session or also if you prefer at some later point. So I'll talk you through what we're trying to do there and would be really grateful for your input. And then finally, we'll talk a bit about what the next steps are and what the plan is for the rest of the life of this working group. Next slide, please, Nana. Okay, so just session logistics. We have a collaborative notes document that we will use in the later parts of this session. Please, if you can, sign in or scan the QR code to provide any notes and comments throughout the session. As you probably know, as all RDA sessions, this one will be recorded and the recording will be made publicly available. I hope that's okay. If you would like to contribute, by all means, just raise your hand or just unmute to join the discussion. There's not that many of us that'll be a problem. And if you have any comments, please, or questions, please put them into the chat or the collaborative notes. I'll try to monitor them during the presentations. Next slide, thank you. So the goals of the session are to give you a bit of background and context about the working group, explain how the working group connects in particular with global policy and open science frameworks, present the work that the group has done, in particular, as I just mentioned, the survey interviews and a little bit on the session we did at the IDW in October last year. Hopefully we'll make some progress on the work of our final recommendation and also just provide some ways for you to engage with the working group and contribute to our work should you choose to do so. Next slide, please. So a bit of background. So we started out wanting to do an assessment of the digital tool needs of key stakeholders during crisis situations, in particular what the challenges are for them. We also had on our list of things to do 3 case studies that we're going to write up in specific areas. Now as I said, we got delayed a little bit with some administrative things, so we have taken that off the agenda for now and are currently working on our final recommendation specifying the characteristics of data tools, systems and services that we think are required by stakeholders in crisis situations, at least as far as we have been able to elicit from the interviews and survey and the last session. There's a link there with more information. Yep, that's fine. I can put that into chat in a minute, the link to the working group. Nana, next slide, please. So just to give you a bit of an update where we're at. So we have developed and conducted a survey, which Nana will be talking about. We have conducted a set of interviews. Mostly our colleague Mara Cheng and Nana have done this. So some results of those will be presented in this session, but I think Mara is still also doing some more in-depth analysis of them. And final recommendation, it's in progress. We have a structure and we have first bits of content. We are hoping to finalize this year, hopefully before the plenary, the next plenary. But yeah, we've said this twice before, so we will be trying to not overpromise at this point. Next slide, please. And that's basically the bit about the working group and its background. If you have any questions at this point, let me know. And I'll just chuck the group page into the chat again, so you can have a look at that if you wish. Oh, good. Then let's move on and I'll hand over to Burchak. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephanie. I'll take over from here. So as part of following the COVID-19 impact between mainly like peak impact 2020, 2023-ish, and then the February 2023 earthquakes we experienced, which we call the centennial, because it was a really very unique case in a large scale, in large area with large impact in Turkey. So in March 2023, we met in UNESCO premises. I think this is where Olivia mentioned about the meeting. So there was a meeting in UNESCO, and then where this working group idea came up. And also the second hat was the having some data, because I'm a statistician by training, and we had some colleagues with data policy background, and we were very much aware that there was a huge need for data, especially on data needed from, especially on crisis times, real time from the field. Of course, covering in terms of disaster risk reduction and disaster risk management philosophy. The literature says we need to do act before, act during the time for response, and then afterwards ex ante and ex post. But it needs to be a cycle with a very crucial need at the time of real crisis. So that's how the idea came, and it's a long title, but DPTC is the project we launched with UNESCO last year in Paris again in 2025, and also we introduced it in Geneva in United Nations Disaster Risk Reduction Global Platform. Next slide, please, Nana. Thank you so much for your help. So that is the website where you can reach out to more detailed information about the IDPC group and data policy DPTC group within that. Next slide, please. And basically, our aim, we came up with the regular meetings with, like, maybe sometimes twice, three times a week. Francis Crowley, I would like to thank to previous IDPC chair Francis Crowley, and Virginia Murray, myself, and lots of colleagues from different disciplines, various disciplines. We met regularly as a working group to bring that idea to life. So we ended up with a fact sheet, guidance, and checklist documentation, which are available now, officially published. Fact sheet is the most comprehensive document to help the stakeholders, that includes private sector, academia, local governments, municipalities, national governments, NGOs, so communities involved. So fact sheet is the most comprehensive documents to tell us about the specifics of data, when, how, why it needs to be collected, methodology, etc. Guidance is for mainly the policymakers, the implementers, who will benefit a lot from that documentation. And checklist is the wrapping up baby, like this session, and it allows people, stakeholders, to put a tick and make it real, like if they really have it, they don't have it, what is missing, what is there, gaps, pros, cons. So that is the documentation. Very brief documents, by the way, user friendly, readable, downloadable. Technology is included. So these three documents came to life, and they are designed to handle the urgent and emerging crisis with data policies. But the key is the 2021 UNESCO Open Science recommendation. It is very much linked with open science principles, and it tells us, the disaster researchers, disaster emergency and crisis people, how to manage, use data ethically, inclusively, which is like one of the keywords of the RDA, efficiency across the scientific, humanitarian, and policy sectors. And it is very much linked to global emergencies such as pandemics, climate-related disasters, armed conflicts, social, technological, geological, all type of hazards are included. Next slide, please, Anna. So there are three documents like this with blue, purple, and green color codes. Blue is the fact sheet, which is from UNESCO, available from UNESCO and CODATA websites. So it tells you why we need science in times of crisis, what is the role of data policy, etc., with more comprehensive, as I said, and we consider the before, during, and after crisis periods. Next slide, please. So the purple is the guidance document. So it briefly and tablizes the public communication and transparency as challenges listed here. Monitoring and evaluation is a crucial part if you are running a project about disaster, crisis, or emergencies. So what are the requirements for data policy in these three phases of before, during, after, preparedness, response, and recovery phases? So it touches to the long-term stewardship of data sharing, access, reusing, flexibility, adaptability, all the words that we come across with different meetings, different webinars, seminars, workshops, conferences. They are all embedded in one brief, nice and neat, tidy documentation, if you ask me, please. Next, please. And checklist is with 10 bullets on the right-hand side. It establishes clear roles, objectives, and responsibilities of institutions, individuals, and so on. It develops data governance and management protocols in open science frameworks, facilitate open data collection accessibility, promote interdisciplinary, multi-stakeholder, and international collaboration, and plan for long-term preparedness and resilience. I picked some of them. So which again serves the requirements and intention of the whole world community to be much prepared to disaster, emergency, and crisis situations. Next, please. And within that, these are the 3 QR codes where they are downloadable and reachable, as I said, from UNESCO website and CODATA website. Next, please. By that, last week we're gonna meet this week again with UNESCO colleagues. So we launched a survey. It will be official by this Friday. So next week I'll be very happy to share with you, if you allow me, to fill in another survey, because we translated the checklist with this ticks on these 10 items which was listed in the previous slide into a survey format. So UNESCO, it will be official UNESCO survey from the UNESCO website officially. So you need to provide your name, institution, role, region in the world. If you already had a checklist kind of stuff for your operational work, tactical work, strategical work, as in preparation for any crisis, disaster, or emergencies. What do you think, like, you from this checklist, what do you have in your own institutional one or personal one? What you don't have? What are the matching points? What are the gaps? So we're gonna try to figure it out from this survey. So understand implementation of crisis data policies, identify gaps and challenges, and at the end of the survey with the findings, we're gonna support future policy and capacity building. Next slide, please. So that is the survey structure. So there's the respondent profile with privacy policy and data protection rights. Of course, you need to mention your full name and institution and all the details. Then we're going to ask in the second half assessment of crisis data governance policies at your own locality. And component 3 is data management and collaboration practices within the institutions. And 4 is preparedness, monitoring, and resilience items available in that institution, specific institution, anywhere in the world, because when it's officially launch on the UNESCO banner, with the UNESCO banner website, we're going to share with our networks and most probably reach out to you as well. Thank you. Next slide, please. So that is how it looks like when you enter the system. So there's respondent information, there's assessment of practices. So we wanted to make it quick and neat. So you just need to read the item and just click what is available in your institution. Completely, partially addressed, not considered. So we left some comment boxes for open-ended questions, because it's quantitative plus qualitative survey. So we will be very happy to hear feedback from your own experiences so that we can improve the document for the future. Next, please. Oh, can you go back one, Nana? Apologies. This work will be presented in the UNESCO Decade work. It is accepted as one of the UNESCO Decade for Sustainable Development Goals. So we'll be in July in UNESCO in Paris to present the survey findings and take it forward for the Decade project implementation. And I'll be very happy to keep in contact with you for this purpose if you're interested. And we really appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thanks, Burchak. Any questions? So with the survey that is currently active or is going to be launched? I missed that bit.
Okay, the survey will be launched this week officially by the end of this week. We piloted it last week with the IDPC members, and it will be out soon to be delivered to you. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot. All right. Yeah, if you could share that with the group once it's launched, that would be wonderful. Let's get to the next part of the session then, Nana. We'll be talking about the findings from the work that has been done. The survey, a lot of the work was done by our colleague Jackie Stevens from Flinders University. On the interviews, a lot of the work was done by Mara Cheng from the Australian Department of Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestry. And Nana, of course, has been heavily involved in all 3 sources. So thanks, Nana, for presenting on this.
Thank you. And so this is the elicitation report. Of course, 2 other colleagues mentioned here, but as well as many others contributed to the design of the survey as well. And so this context has already been set by Burchak, that it follows from UNESCO DPTC. For example, the checklist but also there are other bigger contexts, including Sendai framework and so on. But in this particular case, we all know the frequency of hazards have been increasing, and there is a fragmented systems and for handling this, and there are governance gaps and so on. But in this particular elicitation, we are looking to understand the stakeholder perspectives on all these, the data use, reliability, governance, etc., etc. So this is, as mentioned, this is going through three-pronged approach. The workshop was conducted at IDW in 2025 in Brisbane, and there were 19 participants. Actually, there were 5 questions, but we actually combined one question because of the low participation rate for that question. They didn't get to it. And the survey had about 46 stakeholders, and there are about 36 questions. And then there was also a semi-structured interview with 6 stakeholders, though 5 of them were directly interviewed and 1 filled out asynchronously, and it covered 5 domains. So let's get to the workshop. And of course, there were 19 participants. Of course, they had answered more than once for many of the questions, so reflecting their enthusiastic participation. So you may find more number of responses than there are participants. And this workshop explored a number of issues, including protection of vulnerable population, governance mechanism, cross-border sharing, community data integration, and interoperability barriers, and so on. So this gives you an idea about the participation for each of the mentee questions. And so how can infrastructure protect the vulnerable, and while also maintaining the transparency, what governance mechanisms can ensure accountability and trust, and how should data ownership, consent, etc., benefit sharing be addressed, and how community generated data be integrated into national global system. And you can see the number of responses, somewhat even in some cases. For example, in the governance case, there is even more enthusiastic participation than one would expect. And so when we look at the vulnerable population case, and so there are about 3 clusters emerge from that. One is on the co-design and inclusion, and the second one on the technical safeguards around it, and the governance and policy. So so participants called for co-design policies, and they wanted engagement that prioritize particularly vulnerable communities and care principle. My apologies for the miscase of the care, but for the neutral but also usable information. And of course, there is the privacy was a significant issue, and even issues like trusted research environments for healthcare data was discussed, and then provenance for metadata tracking, data used, users, etc., also came up. And the governance was broadly discussed, and but it was also a separate question. But so in this case, the timely, transparent warnings, etc., came up. But again, participants emphasized a dual approach: one on the technical side of anonymization, provenance of metadata, TREs, etc., coupled with a more participatory governance aided by co-design, care principles, transparency policies, etc. And the second question is particularly on governance. This is what had the most responses, and somebody was willing to go all the way to give multiple responses, of course, and even the number of participants were higher. So this is a multi-stakeholder governance was particularly emphasized, and that also claimed that they wanted to be part of they wanted a seat at the table. And so open data policies were encouraged, and most of the key principles, including fair care, trust principles, UNESCO open science, all that were mentioned. And so in terms of enforcement and safeguards, data protection, officer role, ombudsman being accessible to all, and managing provenance, penalties for breaches, and effective cybersecurity, etc., came up. And so it also shows that the governance should be both top-down and bottom-up. And there were cross-border challenges. That was a third question. Then it talked about ownership as a common good and the higher standards for protection, applying the stringent law among impacted parties in a fair manner, and but also when multiple jurisdictions are involved, use the common most stringent law. And existing frameworks were mentioned, frameworks and standards, and the ethics came up, and especially in the cross-border context. And so they felt that not just the global ethics and governance, but also local one is as important. The community data integration part, there were a number of challenges and the solutions proposed. So they felt that community data is essential, but integration requires sustainability models. But they also felt that community data may replace government data when government suppresses or is unable to provide data for crises. And building ontological relationship came up, and consent and governance also showed up. And often some of the solutions proposed include community assigned licenses, learning from existing systems such as climate data integration and other parallel systems, interoperability standards, and transparent processing and standards. Okay, so it's a number of cross-cutting themes. I wouldn't go into them. Instead, I would give a high-level thing. Privacy by design, yes, certainly came up, and we have mentioned that. Participatory governance, as discussed earlier, and then contextual ethics. They wanted ethics that fits a context. One size doesn't fit all. And interoperability standards and other standards and principles was cutting across. And sustainability and preparedness. So sustainable cost models, and in this case, more on the infrastructure sustainability, and the suitable governance agreements that will stand that test of the stress, and learning from existing system and international cooperation, needless to mention. And in the case of, go to the next one, the survey, again, it covered 36 stakeholders, and it's a online survey was distributed under Flinders University's ethics, where Jackie sits, and the participants came from different contexts, government, academia, NGO, private sector, and then different geographies. And the questions covered data use, systems effectiveness, governance, ethics, etc. There's descriptive statistics. Mostly were done in our studio by Jackie Stevens, and the snowball sampling was used. Okay, wouldn't go into the details, but I would, in terms of in terms of output, and generally you can see that only a quarter reported fully integrated interoperable data system. That quarter, 23%, and about little over half had partial integration, and about 15-16% had none. And I thought that is a bit of quite optimistic estimate. And 43% said systems they were at least somewhat flexible to new crises. And but over a quarter reported limited flexibility, and so on. And most rated their system to be moderately effective for real-time data. And but they all, quite a significant proportion reported difficulty collecting data in real time. But I'm again surprised, only 50% reported that. And about 57% said lack of real-time data as top system level issue. Okay. And the key challenges are the usual suspects: lack of interoperability, inconsistent format, data quality. So maybe there is data, but the quality is suspect. Inaccuracies in the external data. Inaccuracies always figure in the external data, never in ours. And there are sharing barriers, limited time for collection, inadequate systems for integration, etc. And accessing relevant data, and so on were key challenges. And only a third had comprehensive data system policy, a little over a third. And the top ethical priorities, such as balancing speed and accuracy and handling sensitive data, these two actually were raised. And then privacy and confidentiality, avoiding harm, and data accuracy and integrity. And so one of the key things was to improve the interoperability and real-time processing capabilities. But importantly, and they say invest in interoperable infrastructure, strengthen the governance and real-time data sharing, and also building workforce capability and prioritizing sustainability of long-term investment, etc. Came up. And the implication can go from policy to practice to research in many ways. And so in this case, designing a resilient and equitable, open, science-aligned data ecosystem requires a lot of things. And the standards, governance, workforce capability, and sustainable infrastructure, etc. And so the policy must support this. And so it is not it is a interoperability, for example, is a governance challenge, not just a technical one. And fair and open science principles need governance, legal safeguards, etc., etc. So in this sense, it's good to see UNESCO having begun and providing these tool sets and to align people on a common language and practice. But still, in practice, most of the systems are very fragmented and inconsistently accessible, meaning access is difficult, if any. And so it is important to transition from the siloed manual approaches to data to more real-time approach. One of the weak identifiers was one of the weak dimensions was in terms of machine readable licenses, provenance, metadata, etc. And so overall semantic interoperability between data becomes is necessary as we take this data first approach. And this is the semi-structured interviews. Again, as I said, 5 interviews and 1 person filling out in asynchronously the questions. Again, same challenges showed up: interoperability and legal system, historical hazards, assumption breaking down, and so on, under changing climatic conditions, for example. And governance is considered both an bottleneck as well as an enabler. Some felt that, okay, this is going to slow things down, it's making things difficult, and slow ethical approvals, delay pathways for crisis response. But on the other hand, it also engender good practices and gets you to think about things well before crisis. So in that sense, it was considered an enabler. That's how it should be. And so in terms of barriers, there are heterogeneous infrastructure. There are trust issues, surprise, surprise, and the communication failure, and sharing cultures for data is very siloed and conservative. And but there is an emergence of open source communities, crowdsourcing, real-time monitoring, etc. And but long-term sustainability of crisis management is often considered very fragmented and fragile, because crisis not happening is not probably getting much value. That's my interpretation. So there's no guarantee of funding continuity that appeared often. So many things are here. So if I were to put this as a conceptual model, then of course before there are ethical pathways and the minimum information requirements and building a trusted model. During, of course, distributed real-time analytics, and how to fix this missing and inadequate data. And but use of tech came up, but also important in this case is using it responsibly. And but after the crisis, of course, learning and refining these information models and simulating and iterating could be interpreted as coming out of this. And of course, ongoing aligning with standard policy, community co-design, and investing in capacity, both the technical capacity of data and the tools, but also, most importantly, the human capacity. So many takeaways, but one unusual takeaway that came was about the polycrisis, or the crisis being multifaceted, being accruing, a multi-hazard type of problem. For example, bushfire, heat, pollution, COVID, or the co-occurring crisis. In the case of earthquake, under extreme heat. That was one interesting thing that came up. But it was all evident that fundamentally it's a socio-technical problem, not just engineering, not just policy, not just one-sided thing. And interoperability failures repeatedly been mentioned and stems from governance standard system and the shifting realities as well. And preparation is iterative, trusted data custodianship is and pre-approved pathways for governance and ethics, for example, might be essential. And so the compounding hazards must be and the cross-border, cross-sector must be addressed. So this is an overall summary of what we found, and that I will pass on to Stephanie to go through the recommendations, including this and beyond.
Oh, wait a minute. Okay, so before we go there, any questions about this significant amount of information that you've provided, Olivier?
That was very interesting. Thank you very much for the hard work. I mean, I'm particularly interested in the survey results. Again, very interesting because you've got some numbers and item to consider. And to be honest, I learned a lot. I've got a second hat, which I didn't mention at the beginning of the meeting. I'm the chair of the CODATA Seal board. The CODATA Seal is a certification body for trustworthy data repositories. So you mentioned the care principles, the trust principles, which are excellent initiatives. The main weakness of those principles is that they haven't got any metrics so that external people can double check if those principles have been truly implemented. And that's a little bit different with the CODATA Seal because you've got 16 requirements, kind of lightweight, but you've got some metrics and you have some means to evaluate how you have implemented those requirements and how trustworthy you can be. So you don't necessarily need to go to the whole certification process. You can use the CODATA Seal as a self-assessment tool to see if you have implemented those requirements and if you can claim that you're trustworthy. So that's potentially another option that you may consider in your recommendation. If you need some information or presentation on the subject, I'll be more than happy to do that.
Thank you, Olivier. This is great. I mean, we are not just. We didn't pick up these in this elicitation, but we didn't ask that specific question, that preloaded question. But it would be good if you could put some information in the input sheets, and we can certainly consider it as another iteration and validation here.
Just to give a little bit of background to that as well. So I don't know if you're aware of that, but one of our colleagues, Richard Ferris, ran an Australian group for a while that was actually a group of organizations looking to get CODATA Seal certified. So we do have a little bit of background on that, but that was several years ago. So if you have anything that you could put into our collaborative notes, that would be really, really useful, I think.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
That would be wonderful. Thank you.
I mean, I think I've met your ARDC colleagues in Brisbane last October because we had a session led by WDS, I think, on the subject of cohorts put together to go towards certification of repositories. We had an example from Australia, from South Africa, and what was Thailand, I think. But I'll put some. I'll listen to you, but after I'll put some links and information in the collaborative notes. No problem.
That would be wonderful. Thank you, Olivier.
Thank you.
Okay. So just also to comment, we are looking to publish the survey results. So Jackie has written them up and we have all provided some input. And I think she's currently looking where and how to best publish them. I don't know about Myra, whether she's planning to publish the interview results, but I think she was still doing some of the analysis. So that's something we'll have to we'll have to talk about at some point.
Yeah.
Okay. So I can now talk a little bit about what our draft recommendation looks like. If you would like to go to the next slide, Nana. So this is a little bit boring, to be honest, but this is a draft structure that we've come up with, partly based on what the RDA would like us to put into our recommendation, but also, of course, partly based on the things that we have been discussing and the things that we have found. So it's basically a little bit written up like a publication, and we may have to think about whether we want to shorten some of that to make it more accessible. But basically, we would start with some RDA required content, which is an impact statement and how this recommendation contributes to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which should be relatively straightforward. We wanted to then provide some background on the survey, the interviews, and we don't actually have the workshop in here at the moment, but that's probably something we should include as well. So basically a shortened version of what Nana basically presented on. And then the bulk of the recommendation will be recommendations for implementations of data tools, systems, and services in crisis situations. And what I've done is I have pulled out some of the most, not all, of the recommendations that came out of those three sources, the survey, the interviews, and the workshop, and tried to categorize them a little bit. Now, one thing that I was thinking of, Nana, when I saw your before crisis, during crisis, after crisis, and ongoing, that's another way of structuring that. So one of the questions I would have is what would be the best way or a good way of structuring our recommendations? Is it by topic? Is it by when you can do these, or is there another way? So anyway, we'll get to that in a minute. At the moment, it's structured according to specific categories in content. Sorry, Nana.
Yeah, no, I said you can skin the proverbial poor cat in multiple ways.
Indeed.
And in fact, it's even possible to give more than one perspective, if that might aid in the communication. Sorry to interrupt. Sorry.
No, that's fine. So that's one thing to think about. And then we will talk a little bit about capacity building, future research directions, and in particular, we'll have a sustainability plan for the recommendation, and we are looking for adopters as well. Welcome back, Nyla. And finally, we'll have a bit of a conclusion call to action, and we're also collecting references that we will include in the recommendation. Next slide, please, Nana. So just to again mention what the sources are. So as Nana has presented on the survey, the interviews, and the working group session we held at IDW, we are also pulling some information from other reports and publications. So there were two Australian ones in particular. There was a Royal Commission into National Natural Disaster Arrangement Report, which was following from the bushfires in 2019-2020. And there's also a COVID-19 response inquiry report. I'm also aware that the RDA has published recommendations around COVID, so we'll include some of the information from there as well. And also the checklist that was developed by the UNESCO CODATA initiative last year, I think. I've just put the DOI there. So that's another one that we're using as a source, and we're still collecting more. If you have any suggestions, the collaborative notes document has a table at the end in which you could also list some reports and things that we should include in our recommendations if you think so. And next slide, please. Okay. You can just go one further, Nana, please. Okay, so this is a lot of text on here. But what we'd like to do for most of the rest of the session is we'd like to ask everyone in the session to go to our collaborative notes document. There's a link there, which I can also put again into the chat. And there's also a QR code which you can scan, which should take you to the same document. I've just put the collaborative notes back into the chat. There's a section there that's highlighted. It says facilitated discussion and collection of feedback. I think it's on page 4 roughly. And that lists the categories of recommendations and some recommendations under each, which come from the sources that Nana reported on. And what we'd like to ask you to do is do a bit of a sanity check. So, for example, as we just talked about, the categories at the moment are sort of by topic, if you like. Is that a useful way of doing it? Is another way better? Are any of the ones that we have there currently superfluous, or you think there's anything missing? Feel free to suggest any changes. In each category, do the recommendations make sense to you? Are they understandable is one thing. So do you actually are they written in a way that makes it easy to understand what they're about? But also, are they the right recommendations? Is there anything that you are aware of that we should include? Are there things that are missing? The other thing is a lot of the recommendations focus on what should be done, but not so much on how it could be done. And that is definitely something that we need more of. So, for example, data standardization, yes, that's the thing that should be done. That helps interoperability, but it doesn't really talk a lot about how this could be done. Mainly because we asked people what their biggest problems are. They came up with the problems, and that then maps to things that should be done, but not necessarily gives us a lot of information on how this could be done. Now, we do know some of those things, but it would be good to flesh those out a bit more. And if you're aware of any reports, publications, or references that you think we should have a look at, there's a table at the end of the section. If you would like to include them, that would be great. And basically, any other comments, suggestions, feedback you would like to provide would be much appreciated. Maybe before we do this, let's just go one slide further, Nana, please. Just to explain what we'll be doing after this session. So we will incorporate your feedback, and we will also continue to work on the recommendation in our monthly meetings. At some point, we will submit the recommendation for RDA endorsement once we think it's finished, and we will definitely share it with the wider group well before then. And how you can help is you can contribute to the recommendation today in this session, but also afterwards, if you like. Provide additional material for a literature list. If you like to join our monthly working group meetings, we are flexible in terms of time. So we currently have we currently meet at, I think it's 7 a.m. UTC on Tuesdays mostly, but we have some flexibility there, so that's certainly doable. If you're interested, once we have a recommendation in adopting it, that would be really useful to us as well, because that's one of the things RDA needs us to do, find adopters. And yeah, help us develop an adoption plan, if you like. That would be another thing that would be very grateful for. I think you can stop sharing, Nana, at this point. Thank you very much. Does this make sense? Is this sort of clear what we'd like from everyone in the session? Yep. Okay. What I might do then is I might also share the Google Doc. And if you prefer to talk about your suggestions rather than typing them in, that's fine too. It really, really depends what your preferred way of working is, to be honest. So let me just see if I can share my screen. Okay, so hopefully you can see the document. So there is a bit further down, namely here, which this has again the questions that I just had on a slide. So this is a lot of stuff. So by all means, feel free to just pick something that you would like to think about and comment on that. So we've basically put in the recommendations some of the recommendations. And Nana, one thing that you could actually do is if there's anything missing, because I did this, we did our 2 parts of the session in parallel. So there may be things that I have actually overlooked. If there's anything that you think is missing, that would be great if you could enter that as
Certainly.
well. Yep.
Sure.
And yeah, by all means, have a look at the recommendations, have a look at whether these make sense, worded in a way that makes sense, and provide any comments, anything that you feel like would be useful to us would be very gratefully accepted.
Question to you,
Yep.
Stephanie. Would you accept input after the meeting? For
Oh,
example,
absolutely.
any of the participants were to share these questions and so on and
Yeah.
get feedback from elsewhere.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
I'm aware that this is basically throwing a lot of stuff at you and saying, what are your thoughts on this? If that doesn't work for you, that's fine as well. If you are willing to have a look at it at a later stage, sure, that's not a problem at all. And if you want to share this with anyone who might have some input to provide, that would be no problem at all. We'll definitely keep this. I mean, this document it's publicly available to anybody, really. So you are welcome to share it, and you're welcome to provide input. We'll probably have our next working group meeting probably after Easter, I would guess. So yeah, we'll probably look at it during our next working group meeting. But by all means, anything you can provide either in the document or by email to any of us would be very, very much appreciated.
Okay, I have a general question. How far do you want to go in your recommendations? I mean, for interoperability, for example, you suggest that we should build some shared ontology, persistent identifier, etc. Do you want to cite some of them? The same question applies for metadata standards. For example, we know that CODATA has developed the CDIF, which has been tested as part of the World Fair project. So that could be a unique opportunity to promote that standard. And the same applies as well for all that trust frameworks. You mentioned CARE, trust principles, and things like that. I mean, it could be interesting to mention them in your recommendation.
Yeah. So sorry, I'll just answer that before I come to you, Naila. I think what we should do is not be prescriptive, but definitely mention some of those, at least as examples. And I mean, yeah, as suggestions rather than firm requirements, because I think one of the things that came from the survey and the interviews was that I think we can make recommendations on it, but not every recommendation will be applicable to every situation at every context. So, yeah. So, sorry, that was a long-winded answer saying, yes, I agree. I think we should name some of those without being super prescriptive about them, if that makes sense.
I mean, I suppose that you cannot be prescriptive because there are so many different crisis situations that not all of your examples will be applicable. But still, it's sometimes useful to have some examples and see if there are other standards or other persistent identifiers which are applicable.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I just put in DOIs and a couple of dots. But yeah, if you have any that you're particularly thinking about, please by all means put some suggestions in. Naila, sorry.
No, that's fine. So I'm just sorry because I'm really sorry I missed the middle chunk of this session. Crisis is anything, right? It can be kind of political crisis as well, right? This is not maybe Burak. I know you were talking about geographical crisis or climate crisis, but it could also be political climate or whatever we're witnessing in the world at the moment, right? Is that Burak?
Burçak. Yes,
Burçak, I'm
Burçak,
so sorry,
please.
yeah.
Yes. Burak is a male name, so
Okay.
there is always a
I have problems
confusion.
enough with my name. My name is
Yeah,
Turkish, so yeah.
yeah, it's Nejla. I can say
Yeah,
Nejla.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah,
I would
yeah.
say Nejla.
Burçak. Okay.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
so you'll have to tell me how to pronounce your name correctly then. So anyway, Bojack.
Yes, it is because in the Sendai framework of the disaster risk reduction, which is the Bible of all the disaster researchers, it is it has there's a seat for social conflict, so conflict,
Perfect.
crisis situations, that is there. So in the hazard information profiles, HIPs of the ISC and UNDRR, also there's the societal risk, and under that war, conflict, in displacement, everything goes underneath.
Okay,
So
so it could
there are
be,
different categorization. Yes, currently,
populist governments coming in, which is a possibility that you reduce access to data, for example. So if that, I'm just thinking, and maybe I'm just, my question is, did you identify that in your questionnaire, that what we would have to then do in my institution, for example, is really identify what is at risk before, or we would suddenly think, but we actually don't know. We've never done an audit of at-risk data. So it's sort of almost thinking, be organized, have someone in-house who's already at least got that on their radar, that crisis can happen at any point. And what is it at the start that you may have that's at risk? So that's just something perhaps to consider, because I simply don't know even if we had a plan, where we would attach this plan to what data sets or what outputs. And then I suppose my second point would be maybe more, as you said, the how, Stephanie, like technical implementation. Would we do are we going to do some switching between data centers, something like that? Or are we going to have to do some quick curation or adding some metadata later? So to drill down into those aspects, I'll add some notes to this. Yeah. Thank you.
That would be great. Thank you.
But I mean that political or governmental crisis is very actual. We in France have been asked by our ministry to put together a list of data repositories which would be critical for our researchers, and those data repositories being in foreign countries like in the US, for example. I think that they have had the same kind of initiative in Germany. And the idea was to try to bring the data in Europe and make it available to our researchers. I don't know what the action plan will be like after that identification or inventory, but at least this has been an initiative to check or identify the data at risk.
May I?
But yeah.
Yeah, so I just put in the chat. Number one, data as open as possible and as close as necessary is always the slogan that people use. So governments and countries will be keen on that. And this morning there was news circulated among the disaster community that the MDAT, Emergency Management Database based in Leuven, under CRED, Center for Research and Epidemiology of Disasters. So this has a risk of closing down due to funding issues. So they started a campaign to sign so that MDAT stays alive. We'll see how it goes. It's been there since 2000, I think, almost 5 years plus.
So who's funded this so far?
There are lots of agencies, but I think they are receiving some money from USAID. That's the main thing.
Okay. Okay, so how do I pronounce your name correctly? So I don't get that wrong again. It's not Naila, is it?
Oh yeah, Nejla, but I really don't
Nejla.
mind at all.
Okay.
I don't mind. I've lived with it for so long. I don't. No offense taken. Sometimes I call myself Angela on the phone if I'm booking a table at a restaurant because it's just easier than my name. So yeah, Nejla is
Nejla. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I mean, I can give you a few more examples if you want of data repositories in the US that have been closed down due to finding issues or just political decisions, like the CDAC, for example, which was WDS working on the environmental impact of industries and things like that. And it just closed down in 3 weeks, I think. So that can happen.
Which one was that?
The CDAC, SEDAC.
SEDAC. Okay.
Yeah, I think these are really good examples, and I suppose I think the recommendations are very good and clear. I'll need to read over them again. What the next step is maybe is to put some examples of implementation, or maybe that's another iteration, so that these governance, what does that mean in your own context, I suppose. And I think, the last one, strengthening international and regional coordination. I think Burçak already said, if these networks exist now, let's try to embed them, and it would be great to have, some network people can then dial into, but maybe before the crisis happens, or, it's all too late, maybe, if the government gets into, and then overnight repositories could be shut down. You might have an hour to switch the data to a data center, whatever, if that's technically possible, I gather it is. So you need to really galvanize people very fast, or appoint someone who would know what to do in a hurry. Or, come to you, the RDA network, or, whoever could host such a network of crisis for data. But I would come to you. I would call you up.
Yeah, why not? So there are always ways.
Exactly.
If there's a way, there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah. And then would you have some guidance written down? I mean, you could, in a handbook, or, something kind of technical solutions, and what agreements, institutional agreements would have to be kind of in place.
So
and I suppose
I will raise this issue to my colleagues.
I think so, yeah. And libraries, I mean, the librarians among you will know that they exist, these plans, right, in libraries for special collections if the rain falls down and everything gets wet. I mean, they have these plans, I think. The question is, they certainly don't have it for data where I work. So, yeah, I think it's really good to get.
Would be interested to hear how the privacy is handled in the context of the crisis. But if even either before, during, or after.
That's a really good point, because that's what people panic about, I think, as well. Yeah, excellent.
And what are good practices to handle privacy in crisis?
That's a good practical question. And one, of course, you can toss it and then worry about it later. I think that's what happens often.
And that's also the national context, I suppose, right? That's the problem. And if you're transferring, what if you're going to try to transfer data from America to Europe or something? Well, that's tough. But you're right, maybe just do it. Worry about it.
And I guess it's also dependent on what the crisis is. I mean, if it's something that is life-threatening to many people, then I think privacy is probably less of a concern than if it's something that is not so bad, if that makes sense. So yeah, I guess it'll depend on the situation, but it would be good to have some guidelines or some thoughts around, okay, what are good ways of handling privacy in different types of um, difficult situations slash crises.
Mm. Is there a typology? Can say,
Mm.
okay, this is a magnitude of the crisis or the risk, total risk of the crisis. So we toss privacy for now.
Mm.
And but it's also
And then how do you mop up afterwards, though?
you
So
cannot.
how do you, yeah.
This is a thing. So I was
Mm.
also going to mention the opportunism that might follow crisis in gathering such information. If somebody is hell-bent on getting private data, probably one of the best times to get it is when there is chaos.
Mm.
And yeah.
Yeah. One of the things I've come across sort of, so one of the programs that ARDC, the Australian Research Data Commons, has run a few years ago was on bushfires. And one of the problems we had there, and that was both before, during, and after crisis, was that basically interoperability and even things like terminologies. So a fire that had a status of catastrophic in one state, when it moved across the border to the next state, it was called something else. And that created a lot of confusion because there were different ways of categorizing the threat, the fire. It was really difficult to bring data together from across states. So that's why I put in there data sharing access across jurisdictional boundaries, not just institutional, because even in a country like Australia that has a lot of fires and should know how to do this, it's actually not as well developed as you would think once you go across state boundaries, for example. And fires do that. I mean, the fire doesn't stop at the New South Wales border and says, no, I can't go there. It just moves. Um, Basically, the only state that can't have that happen is Tasmania because it's an island, but everything else, fire moves across. And if the emergency agencies in different states can't really communicate with each other, can't really exchange information without confusion, that's a real problem. So that's why I wanted to add the jurisdictional as well.
Mm.
And that plays into the pre-approving ethics and governance pathways as well. Because if you have to work out data sharing agreements across jurisdictional boundaries at that point, that's too late. Ashla?
I'm looking at the six, the end.
Yep.
Technological capacity. I mean, what about storage? Did you discuss that? I'd imagine you need to sort of really upscale fast I mean, I'm very naive about this, but I imagine you need to dump some data somewhere. So you need to know who in your jurisdiction or outside your jurisdiction might actually be able to upscale on a fast level, or what data centers are there that could say, okay, look, we take it, whatever it is, put it in dark archive. So
Yeah. So this one came up. I forgot where. I think it's probably from the interview or from the workshop. But I would also add, this is in tension with also handling responsibly. So I would add the combined one. Of course, invest in these technologies, but also in a responsible manner.
I just put the COVID-19 guidelines in before I forget them again. That was an RDA output that was done very, very quickly during COVID.
That was great, wasn't it? I mean, that just shows that when people needed it, they really came together fast. So
yeah. I think it was published in July 2020 or something like that. It was
Amazing.
very, very agile. Like they produced multiple rounds, but yeah, it was pretty quick. So one thing that's in here, and I was going to ask Nana about, and that's the prioritized community co-design. So I stuck that under processes and workflows at this point, which may not be the best place to put it. Was there any indication about how this could be done?
Okay. Let me give the context where it came about.
Yep.
So it appeared in definitely in the workshop, and but the idea and probably elsewhere as well. So the co-design part came about in multiple ways. One is they wanted the local issues to be handled. They wanted a participatory approach, and so it's not just national. Just do it with us also. How it did not say how it could be done, but if I were to make a reasonable guess, it's got to be through like a wisdom of the crowd approach, maybe spawning different local groups to act in their local capacity, and then build it up.
Yeah.
So like a bottom-up fashion, like a grassroots coming together, each develop their own, and then build it up. So you need, one of the things I did summarize is that you need the governance both top-down and bottom-up. And so some of the contributions for this could come from the co-design, from the bottom-up.
So I put also in one thing that I saw on your slides, and that's I think pretty crucial. Nothing about us without us. So if it affects a community, the community should be involved.
That quotation itself, I just put it there for effect. It's not a quote from the thing. Okay, so because it is a phrase, so I just put it in quotes, not to indicate it came from the interviews or from the elicitors. Yeah.
Okay, I think it still sort of summarizes the idea of co-design to some extent, at least the underlying principle.
Essentially, it's a simplification, I thought, of care principle, right?
Yeah. And I think we should list, like Olivier said in the beginning, we should have some examples, and I think the care principles really fit here as well. Okay. Any other comments or suggestions? Sorry, I'm just scrolling around a little bit to see what's been happening.
So with the survey, this time when I was going through this time, again, some of the things I was a little puzzled with some of the numbers, but I did not comment on the paper on that. Maybe should need to, because some of them seem, these are stated preferences, but it seems a little too optimistic. And so that's something to comment on in the paper when we to reflect on as well, in addition to reporting on.
Yeah, it might be good to revisit our questions and see if we've biased things. Hopefully not, but if some questions may have that in them. So yeah, that would be a worthwhile thing to do. Yeah. So I'm just looking through your comments. Pre-crisis stress group practice to identify potential at-risk data. Yes, that's a very good point. Yeah. as I said, if you have any additional comments, questions, input, that would be great. If you haven't joined our group and are interested in joining it, please feel free to do so, and then you'll hear about our regular meetings. You can just see. Yep.
How shall I join? Sorry, I should know. Where shall I put my name?
Okay. If you, I don't know if you're a member of our group.
No, I should be, shouldn't I? Let me join the group and then I'll get the.
Yep.
Yeah.
That would be great.
And what's your time frame?
Yep.
Yeah. What is your time frame, Stephanie, then to get this, the group
to get the recommendation finished?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll give you the optimistic response by the next plenary.
Yeah.
Now that is possible. It depends a little bit how we're going over the next little while. So that would be the plan. I don't know if we will be having a session in London. That'll depend a lot on who will be able to be there. And whether we've finished by then. If we finish earlier, then we might just we might not do a session, but might just go through the RDA endorsement process for the recommendation and just sort of launch it through the RDA rather than at a session. But that'll really depend a little bit on how we're going over the next little while. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I'm just thinking from a personal perspective because I'm involved in these proposals. You know, Germany is really keen on this, and I would really like to cite it or at least reference it because I think we should build on what you've done. Totally stupid to, you know, that's the whole point of this, right? So I will mention the group for sure, and I'd like to even put it to the you know, we could be a case study or so. That's hopefully, you know, that's what I'd like to really socialize in the German group that I'm involved in. Yeah.
So what we have been doing, and I don't know if I said that while you were here, we are planning to publish the survey results. So we have basically a nearly written paper on those. Now we haven't submitted it anywhere yet, so I have no idea what the time frame would be for that. But what would be your ideal time frame for us to publish the recommendations?
Yeah, I mean, I think in 4 weeks we need to submit.
Okay.
So no. But you know that if the proposals go ahead and the projects go ahead, then we can keep close contact, and I will definitely mention the group in the proposal, and you know, it should all be linked up. And this is specifically for earth science data. You know,
okay.
So, yeah. Yeah, thanks.
Have you talked to ESIP about earth science data?
No.
Because I think they have, ESIP is the Earth Sciences Information Partnership that's run out of the US. It's a little bit like RDA for earth sciences with different working groups and things. Yes.
Yeah, that's because Shelley's got this big meeting in Berlin next week, which is why I asked you.
Okay.
She's got this, she's convening this big thing. And so there I will, But does Shelley know about this group? Is she aware of it?
I don't know. But I was thinking of ESIP in particular because they have some disaster groups.
Is that associated with the data rescue project? You know, it was
not necessarily.
Big...
Okay. How about I'll pull out what I know and send it to you, and then you can have a look at it.
Thanks a lot. Okay, thanks.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, I think we're basically at time. So thank you very much.
One quick question before we leave. The work group started its work in 2023, right? So generally, you've got a 3 years kind of existence. Do you plan for a follow-up or a new work group or anything?
That is an extremely good question. I don't know. We haven't discussed it, but we should. So far, because we've gotten a bit of a delay, we were meant to have finished a year ago, basically, but we couldn't because we ran into some administrative issues. So we've been very focused on trying to get the recommendation to a point where we can actually do something with it. That's a very good question and one that we should really bring up in one of our next working group meetings.
Okay.
I don't know.
Because I mean that will impact my willing to join the work
Yeah.
group. There's no real point to join if there's just 2 months left.
Well,
okay.
I think we have at least 6 months left, to be honest.
All right. Okay.
And yeah, if you feel like you would like to contribute to our work, that would be wonderful. Yeah, and I guess in a way it'll also depend a bit on how the others are feeling about continuing or doing a follow-up group or something like that. We have, as I said, we haven't discussed it, but that's certainly something we should discuss. And I'll put that in the notes somewhere. Actually, probably under next steps would be a good idea. Okay. Thank you very much for your time. Thanks for coming and for all your contributions. It was a small group, but it was very, very helpful to us. So